Live! I'm not live. I don't know what we're talking about. I'm recording this, but, I'm used to saying live. Welcome to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. In a moment, we're going to talk with Zac Jackson. Lot to get to. Just 3 days before the Browns make their first-round pick in the NFL draft, and we'll get to all of it. Obviously, a busy weekend, and including playoff basketball, in which the Cavs won their first game against Toronto, and playoff basketball underway, and Bet Rivers is helping you take your shot with a first-round bonus bet. Bettors in Ohio can get a $10 bonus bet to use on basketball when they enter the code ATB413. That's ATB413. You see it right there in the Bet Rivers app. That code again, ATB413. Offer ends on April 26. Must be 21 and in Ohio. Eligible players only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-589-9966. We bring in Zac Jackson. Zac, how you doing today? 3 days to go, man.
Bull, are we live or not? Because that's going to determine how I answer your question.
Well, you and I are live at the moment.
Okay.
By the time people are watching this, it'll be probably an hour or two later. But, so no. For the record, we are not live. But, I want my first question actually has nothing to do with the Browns. It's what do you think of the blockbuster trade, Dexter Lawrence to the Bengals, and what does that say, at least for Cincinnati's opinion, on the quality of this draft, or does it not say anything?
Well, I think if you're a Bengals fan, you're still restless, right? Because you feel disappointed about the last 2 years and uncertain about the coach and some things. But I think you feel a lot better about the commitment to keeping the guys they have happy, right?
Yes.
And at least going for it. And so what I've said about the Bengals is not a profound thought, right? You and I have talked about it in front of the mic in a way. Like if Joe ever stays healthy and they play a little bit of defense, they are an AFC contender. In the last 2 years, that hasn't happened.
That's
and
right.
Even last year when things went their way and they scored all those points, they gave up 40 points 3 weeks in a row or three out of four.
Yeah.
And they sunk themselves before Thanksgiving. So they looked at having the number 10 pick where they had options, but they didn't think they could fill defensive tackle, and they were willing to spend. They only gave him a small raise, especially on today's rates.
Yeah.
And they were willing to do it. So I think it's a little bit of a bold move. I think it's a sensible move. I pegged them as a team when it felt like this was going to be real. So it's kind of a loud statement to the AFC North. I think there's still uncertainty across the division, but you have two teams that have really good quarterbacks that are going for it, and you have two teams that have good defenses and uncertain quarterback situations and uncertain futures. So, with the coaching changes and everything, this was a bold move by the Bengals. And like I said, given health and Dexter Lawrence playing like Dexter Lawrence, then this is an AFC contender.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I kill Mike Brown and I can't stand him as an owner, they have done a lot of things in the last year that they never do. I mean, the extensions to both Higgins and Chase, and then making a trade like this. I don't think they've ever not had a first-round pick because they're very conservative. The only other big trade they've made in the first round was to trade up for Kajana Carter, which obviously turned out to be a disaster. But usually they just stick with where they are. Maybe they trade down once in a while, but they never make a move like this. So it was pretty shocking.
Yeah, I was borderline shocked.
Yeah,
I saw it, that's for sure. I was away from the phone, and I came back and I was like, "Whoa, that's a loud statement to the division."
Yeah, it is fascinating, and as you say, get the defense. The Bengals have lost 7 games the last 2 years in which they've scored 30 or more points. No other team in football has done that more than 2 times. They've done it 7 times.
Look, and it was Joe and the kicker and all sorts of heroics the year they went to the Super Bowl, but they had outstanding defensive tackle play that year.
They did
as well, and they just haven't had it since.
Yeah, led by DJ Reader. All right, now let's get to the Browns. We know they're the opposite. They've got outstanding defense at all 3 levels. Their problem is on offense. Yet, most of the best players in this draft, especially where they're picking, are defensive players. As we get closer to the draft, do you see it as realistic, as much as their obvious needs are on offense, that they could go defense just because that's where the talent is, or no?
I think could. Boy, I'm not closing the door, and I've actually kind of changed my thinking in that from absolute firm offense to a little bit I'm not sure. Okay. But I think before they turned in the card on, say, Caleb Downs, I think they would explore every trade down opportunity.
Yeah,
to move down, to position themselves maybe later in this draft or with an extra pick in next year's draft. Probably not a first unless a significant trade down. But, I would think that the better option, and I would think that their thinking would be before you did that to move down. Still get in maybe that second tier or even the first tier of tackles because nobody seems to know. And I've talked to two teams myself who tend to view the offensive linemen in this class in different ways. So,
Right. Yeah.
I think to Daniel Jeremiah and Dane Brugler, Spencer Fano is the top offensive lineman. But you see the mocks, and Brugler has him going all the way to 12, and the Browns trade down and still get him. So that's a possibility. So, yeah, I put it as very or as highly, highly unlikely that a defensive player or a running back is the Browns' first choice. Well, I'm not totally closing the door, but I think it's a couple philosophical discussions. Do we value line or do we value receiver? And how much do we value trade down to where we think that that's just the best plan in terms of long-term thinking? Or is there a player at 6 that we have to get in one of those two categories? So those obviously conversations are intertwined, but they're two separate. And one is driven obviously by, can you realistically trade down? I mean, 75% of mock drafts across the world, whether they're by somebody who knows anything or don't, have Dallas trading up to 6. So is that really on the table? And is it still on the table come Thursday evening? We'll see.
Do you think does the fact that the 10th pick is now the Giants, does that change anything from Dallas's perspective? Because maybe they think the Giants might go offense as opposed to the Bengals who would go defense. And also, does it affect possibly what the Giants might now do at 5? And could the Browns be thinking about that?
Yeah, so here's my thought, and this is just my thought.
Yeah.
If the Giants go either Jeremiah Love or Carnell Tate at number 5,
right,
then to me it greatly increases the chances of the Browns getting proper value in a trade down, because then the Giants would be targeting, to me, Caleb Downs at number 10.
That's a good point.
So then if Dallas wants Caleb Downs, then Dallas is more likely to come up. And if Dallas wants Sonny Styles, they're more likely to come up. And so it's not just the Giants at 10 in the history there, but Washington's at 7.
Yep.
So Dallas in one move could jump 2 division rivals and get the player that they really covet.
Yeah.
Do they think they need to do that? And which player do they really covet?
Yeah.
We are guessing. But as soon as I started to process the Dexter Lawrence thing, that was my first thought, is this probably increases it now to whatever percent. Because like I said, to the people that say this is a no-brainer and it has to be done, given Dallas's situation and Cleveland's situation, I nod and agree. It's just there's so much uncertainty here.
Yeah.
There's no chalk pick. There's no consensus thought. I mean, everybody knows that the Jets are going defense at 2 in one form or fashion, but 3, 4, and 6 all want to trade down, and now the Giants have options because they can target a specific player anywhere at 5 and still get a need at 10.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I wonder if the Browns have any concerns in terms of, if you trade down to 12 with the idea that you're going to grab an old lineman, the Chiefs are sitting there at what, 11?
At 9.
At 9, right. And
Dolphins are at 11 and could be an O-line team.
Right. Also. Both teams could be offensive line teams. So I wonder how much that fact. It's fascinating, I guess.
Well, it does.
Think about all this.
It does factor in, Bull, but if you make the trade down, you're saying we are open to a larger group of players.
That's true.
If Spencer Fano is the Browns' target, and then they're going to get him at 6.
That's
and
a good
then
point.
They would only pivot if he goes 3, 4, or 5. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if they're like, okay, we're open to taking a receiver other than Tate, and we are open to Caden Proctor or Monroe Freeling, someone in that situation, then you trade down, you add that pick in, to shape your later plans or and open up your later options.
Right.
I think when people talk about trade down, I think during the draft and after the draft, picks between 23 and 29 have been traded like 11 times in the last 3 drafts.
Yeah.
And the Browns are at 24. Last year, 25 was traded for pick 34 and 99. So it's kind of the framework of, are you willing to move down and then add another late 3? And that it would depend on who wants to move up.
Right.
But for the Browns to say, okay, another top 100 pick, and we're still going to get a good player in that kind of that bucket, that second tier.
Yeah.
It's feasible thing. And like I said, I think looking at precedent is important there. And there's so many trades made in that range. Now, some of that is that these teams that pick at the bottom of the first round are more willing to either move down or chase specific things. Because some of those trades were made for veteran players, right? Where teams think they're missing that one Super Bowl or conference championship piece. But there's a lot of movement there. And if the Browns want to move down and try to add more picks or add a 27 second round pick that could eventually be in that arsenal, we will see. And we know what's looming out there potentially after June 1st with the big trade that
Yeah.
could happen.
Yeah.
And we will, I still put that as unlikely to happen, but possible. But I think come Friday morning or come next Monday when we talk, the forecast on that could be different one way or the other.
Yeah. What would change your opinion on is it based on who the Browns are going to draft or what would factor into that potential Myles Garrett trade at June 1st?
Yeah, I think of how they go about it.
Yeah.
Obviously if they take a defensive player or specifically a defensive lineman, it's like, whoa, okay. They thought this guy was good and they're willing to move on. But I think it would be in how they stack their future picks and how they use these. Because one of the problems with trading Myles Garrett, and there are multiple, so I'm not saying it's going to happen, is that you're counting on that pick being 28 or 31st or 32nd, for the team that's going all in there. So how does that value in? How many do you get? Do you get a player? Last year they didn't draft a receiver and they felt comfortable about it. And their follow-up plan was to sign Deontay Johnson the day after the draft and then Isaiah Bond in August when he got cleared of his charge. So that wasn't good. So it's like they have been a future long-term planning thing. In some ways it's paid off.
Yeah.
But in other ways it just hasn't. And so like you draft the best available player and you stay open to all your options. But at some point you have to address your needs or they still become needs and you still trot out Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and Isaiah Bond as your wide receivers.
We don't want to do that.
Right.
You talked about a potential trade late in the first round. Do you think a team is interested in trading into that area for Ty Simpson or no?
That's one of the interesting things. Are the Steelers going tackle? Are the Steelers interested in Ty Simpson? Are the Jets interested in Ty Simpson? The Jets have 3 first-rounders next year, so they're probably not interested in Ty Simpson.
True.
But maybe because they might just think he's a free flyer,
Yeah.
So that's how that thing is positioned. We will see. The buzz you hear from the plugged in people, Jeremiah and Brugler, among others, is that Ty Simpson is not going to go in the first round.
Right.
So who are teams trading up from the low 30s to the high 20s for? And a lot of that probably depends on which offensive tackles slip and which pass rushers are available. It's a really good pass rusher class. So do teams think they can wait till the second round or they need to come up and get the 4th best one, the 6th best one? And again, it's always team to team on how they view these guys, because even like I said, talking to 2 teams who a month out from the draft view this O-line class differently, how they view it and how they go about it and actually making the picks are often 2 different things.
That's a good point. If the Browns stick with 24 and if they take an offensive lineman at 6 or even 12, which wide receivers besides Carnell Tate will definitely be off the board by the time they pick?
Yeah, Mekhi Lemon's going to go somewhere in that top half of the first round to before 20. Tyson is the wild card because he has such an extensive injury history. And so I think on talent, teams would start looking in the top 10 and teams have looked. I don't think given the injury history that you pull the trigger unless you love him. And so maybe KC or the Giants or somebody absolutely loves him. But, to me, he's more back to the Browns range because of that injury history. And then it's body type. Yeah. Lemon is a slot receiver and a pretty polished one for 21 years old, right? Concepcion is a get the ball in his hands guy. He's got to learn as a receiver, but he's just electric and you line him up all over the place. And if you get him in the right offense and he develops, then he's great. Whereas Tyson is the big traditional outside receiver. Yeah. And then in the next tier, it's kind of the same. Omar Cooper is probably a slot, but can play other places. There's some bigger guys later that have wide range of grades and projections. Right. So, we'll see on that. But, I think Concepcion is a really interesting guy. And just given the state, if the Browns aren't ready to commit to, hey, this is our number one, then he makes a lot of sense. Because, frankly, the Browns are committed to Jerry Jeudy. We can roll our eyes at it, and we do.
Sure.
They are.
Yeah.
They're giving Cedric Tillman one more chance in a new offense because they have to.
Yeah.
So based on those 2 guys, I think Concepcion is kind of the missing piece there. And as long as his knee checks out at 24, I think that's a really good pick. So that's who I have mocked. I have him going offensive line first and Concepcion second. But,
is that with the assumption that Tyson will be gone? And if Tyson were not gone, would he be a no-brainer at 24?
I don't think a no-brainer because of the injury history. So, if teams view that and he's going to go before that. KC is a potential wide receiver team. The Saints at 8 are a potential wide receiver team. The Dolphins have 2 picks, 11 and 30. They're a potential wide receiver team.
Yeah.
The Steelers are a potential wide receiver team. The Rams are at 13.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of guessing here.
Sure.
The overall feeling is that a bunch of these tackles are going to go and a bunch of these wide receivers are going to go. But somewhere in their defensive players and other guys are going to go. And so at 24, the Browns are still going to get a player that they like and probably a player that they rank in their top 15. But I don't think Tyson's a no-brainer on anything because this is not just a hammy that kept him out of the pre-draft process. There is an extensive injury history that was largely the reason that he had 2 amazing college football seasons that got him on the radar, but 2 that barely existed because of the injuries.
I'm forgetting the name now, of course, but somebody I've seen connected with the Browns a little bit at 24 if they did go defense. I don't know that I see that, but whatever. The corner that missed all last season. Can you refresh my memory on who that is?
Oh, the kid from Tennessee.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think it's more the safety, Emmanuel McNeil Warren from Toledo, or the Oregon safety, Dylan Tiedemann, if he was to drop.
Right.
So
you think they're more likely to go safety than corner if they did go defense there?
Yeah, I think teams are looking for those do everything safeties who, obviously if everybody could have a Kyle Hamilton, they would.
Yeah.
But just the way defenses are being played, the value of a Caleb Downs and, players like Emmanuel McNeil Warren, who's 6'3" and rangy, in these guys. So, Delpit is only signed through this coming year.
Right.
And Hickman is on this restricted tender that they could sign him to a long term, but right now he's just locked up for 1 year. So to me, in the first round, that's way too early for safety. Because these guys are freaks, but there's a couple of them every year now.
Mm-hmm.
And Seattle got a really good one early in the second round last year. So I actually mocked Emmanuel McNeil Warren in the second round to the Browns because I know they like him.
Yeah.
But, anything short of offense, I'm going to have questions about.
That's fair.
And maybe I'm just going to have questions anyway.
Right.
Yeah. But like when you look at it's not just one player, and it's certainly not just about 1 year. But this offense pool is in bad shape. And so far, 2 of the 3 offensive linemen that they've added are 30 years old.
Yeah.
And we're just not wanted by their prior teams anymore. So I'm hey, take a tackle, and if he has to move into guard or be your right tackle for the future, like it can be a good pick, even if he's not an excellent left tackle on October 1st this year.
That's fair. Last thing on the Browns, then we'll wrap it up with a quick Cavs question for you. David Njoku, are you surprised he doesn't have a job yet?
No, not at all. It's a good tight end class.
Yeah,
he's an older player. He has not exploded.
Right.
And he probably wants money based on, the production, based on the 8 great games he played in 9 years for the Cleveland Browns. So, teams get to a certain point. There's a couple of waves of free agency, and then teams wait until after the draft bowl because the compensatory formula ends. That's why Deontay Johnson was signed the day after the draft last year.
Right.
That's why every year, older established players in this league sign on Memorial Day or after mini camps in mid-June. Because you just kind of wait for the right fit. So I'm confident that someone's going to sign David Njoku and give him a contract with incentives that will allow him to make at least close to the money that he thinks he's worth. But I'm completely unsurprised that he's still available right now.
Final thing, Cavs, a very impressive game 1, especially in the second half. They covered the spread as well. They're an 8.5-point favorite in game 2 tonight. Who you like with the points?
Yeah, I just think the Cavs are way better right now, especially if Toronto doesn't have their point guard, because it's not just not having your point guard. It's just their lack of depth shows up. And the Cavs at full strength are a deep team, and they're a team with firepower. They're better inside than the Raptors are. They're better at guard than the Raptors are. So I still don't think it'll be easy up in Toronto later this week, and I don't necessarily think it will be easy tonight. But I also don't think that the Raptors are going to hold the Cavs under 115, 120 points. Because I just think there's that much firepower, and they're just kind of figuring it out. So obviously the Strus explosion was nice, and James Harden was great, and so was Mitchell. But I look at who's playing in the post for the Raptors, and if the Cavs need to go in there and win that way, they can. And if they need Harden or Mitchell to take it over, they will. So I think it'll be a little more competitive tonight. Like I turned it off in the fourth quarter the other day and went back to doing my errands.
Yeah.
But I will be surprised if the Cavs don't go to Toronto up 2-0 and end up winning, by 8 or 10 again. I mean, they were up 22. I think the final was only 13, right?
Yeah.
You're right. It was an easy cover.
Yeah.
But that was a domination, and it was over it was over by the midway through the third quarter.
Pistons were the only favorite to lose. You shocked by that? You think Magic got any shot in that series?
They do. They have a shot. I mean, they've stolen home court and they have Paolo.
Yeah.
But we'll see. It's going to get interesting. We always jump to conclusions here after round ones. I think Atlanta has a chance. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen in Houston, in Lakers, because of the injuries of who's going to be there. And the Rockets just stunk.
Yeah, they were terrible.
There were 36 total points scored in the second quarter of that game. The Cavs and Raptors scored 36 points in 4 minutes. They probably will again tonight, So
that's probably true.
Long way to go. I love it. I loved having it on. And I'm not going to jump to conclusions really in any of these series except for OKC and Boston, I don't think.
Yeah, that's fair enough. All right, Zach, great stuff as always. And Zach will be with us. Oh, wait, but since this is the last time you're on before the draft, why don't you make your official prediction for what the Browns are going to do? Official guess, I guess.
Okay, my official guess will always be right because it's not a prediction. It's just a guess. I think they will trade down to number 12. And at 12, they will select either Caden Proctor or Monroe Freeling.
There you go. I think that's pretty reasonable. And you know what? If they were going to take Spencer Fano at 6, who knows who's going to be the best of those guys? You get an extra pick. And what do you think they get? A second rounder this year?
Yeah. Well, it'll either be a second rounder this year or it'll be 12 and 20.
Oh, yeah, right. Getting the other
Cowboys. 3 first-round picks, which then at 20, you can just flat out take the best player.
That's right.
Regardless of position.
Yeah. That would be a good situation.
Yeah.
Zach, great stuff. Enjoy the draft this week, and you'll be with us again next Monday to recap what the Browns actually did. We'll look forward to it. Thanks, Zach.
See you then, Bull.
All right. Zac Jackson of The Athletic. He does a great job. Love having him on the podcast. Love having him on UCSS. Thanks, everybody, for joining me today. Thanks to Drew and Max for producing today. I'll be back on later today, live after Game 2, Cavs-Raptors. Join me live right here in the bullpen. Until then, we'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. See you, everybody.